Listen to the silence. Listen to the wind. Listen to the stars. Hear trees. Dance. Dance to the beat of your neighbor's heart. Dance to the rhythm of your childhood dreams. Sing. We'll be doing some of that today. Sing and hum a wordless song to the tune of your rushing blood. And pray. Pray with a fever that makes you sweat through February snow, with a fervor that gives you chills in July or even the hot days in April. Shout your prayer like a howl till the sound of your soul touches the clouds and haunts the moon. Come, let us howl our hallelujahs. Let us sing and celebrate. Come, let us be and worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. I'm Bill, and I'm your worship associate today. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to welcome one another better. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you're with us, and whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are, even if you wear a hoodie and shorts to church. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. So, if this is your first time, please take a moment to prepare yourself and your space for our time together. If you're joining us from the interwebs, you can get a candle and a way to light it so you can join in with us from home. Now, as Reverend Michelle lights the chalice flame, let us kindle our own flames along with her to these words from Eric Walker Wickstrom. Here today, in this place and where these people, and with these people, sorry, I can't read today, may we listen so that we can hear, may we hear so that we can feel, may we feel so that we can know, and may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of resilience. With Reverend Michelle, we light a candle of courage, acts of service, fellowship, and hope. May we find and cultivate these foundations of resilience in ourselves and in one another. As you know, we pull from many religious traditions, including Christianity. So now, please join us in singing our opening song in honor of today being Palm Sunday, Hosanna in the Highest. The words will be on your screen. Go ahead and be seated. All right. Please join me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another. Thank you.
Your hands lie open in the long fresh grass. The fingers picture gleams and glooms with billowing skies that scatter and amass. All round our nest, far as the eyes can pass, are golden king-cup fields with silver edge, where the cow parsley skirts the hawthorn hedge. 'Tis visible silence, still as the hourglass. Deep in the sun-searched growths, the dragonfly hangs like a blue thread loosened from the sky. So this winged hour is dropped to us from above. Oh, clasp we to our hearts for deathless dower, this close companion inarticulate hour of twofold silence is the song. The song of love.
So for our time for all ages today, well, first, we're inviting the young ones to stay with us in our service for the whole service today, and they are welcome to sit in the pews, to sit up here with the extra stuff to have fun with. And our normal child care coordinator could not be here today due to a death in the family, so that's why you're not seeing her. But I picked a story not only for the kids, but for all of us, because, you know, it's the time for all ages. So y'all want to hear a frog and toad story? Love Frog and Toad. This is by Arnold Lobel. And I can't show the pictures for copyright reasons at the moment, but it's a fabulous story nonetheless, so we get to use our imaginations for the pictures. All right. Toad was sitting on his front porch. Frog came along and said, "What's the matter, Toad? You're looking sad." "Yes," said Toad, "this is my sad time of the day. It's the time when I wait for the mail to come. It always makes me very unhappy." "Why's that?" asked Frog. "Because I never get any mail," said Toad. "Not ever?" asked Frog. "No, never," said Toad. "No one has ever sent me a letter. Every day my mailbox is empty. That's why waiting for the mail is a sad time for me." Frog and Toad sat on the porch, feeling sad together. Then Frog said, "I have to go home now, Toad. There's something I must do." Frog hurried home. He found pencil and a piece of paper. He wrote on the paper. He put the paper, you guessed it, in an envelope. And on the envelope he wrote a letter for Toad. Frog ran out of the house. He saw a snail that he knew. "Snail," said Frog, "please take this letter to Toad's house and put it in his mailbox." "Sure," said the snail, "right away." Then Frog ran back to Toad's house. Toad was in bed taking a nap. Toad, said Frog, I think you should get up and wait for the mail some more. No, said Toad, I am tired of waiting for the mail. Frog looked out the window at the mailbox. The snail, you guessed it, was not there yet. Toad, said Frog, you never know when someone may send you a letter. No, no, said Toad, I do not think anyone will ever send me a letter. Frog looked out the window. The snail was not there yet. But Toad, said Frog, someone may send you a letter today. Don't be silly, said Toad. No one has ever sent me a letter before, so no one will send me a letter today. Frog looked out the window. The snail was still not there. Frog, why do you keep looking out my window? Because now I am waiting for the mail, said Frog. There won't be any, said Toad. Oh, yes, there will, said Frog, because I have sent you a letter. You have, said Toad? What'd you write in the letter? Frog said, I wrote, Dear Toad, I am glad you are my best friend. Your best friend, Frog. Oh, said Toad, that makes a very good letter. Then Frog and Toad went out on the front porch to wait for the mail. They sat there, feeling happy together. They waited a long time. 4 days later, the snail got to Toad's house and gave him the letter from Frog. Toad was very pleased. The end. Thank you, Katya. We had us some church bells in here today, didn't we? Thank you for bringing that beautiful prayer for Ukraine into our space. And now we enter the time here in our service that we make for what our hearts are feeling and reaching out for our cares and concerns for one another and those around the world. We lift up and hold the joys and sorrows and concerns and challenges that we may each be facing. During our time of silence in our service, I invite you, if you are online, to share any joys or sorrows or significant milestones of your own in the comment section. And for those of us in this room, During our time of silence, I invite you to call up and to call out any cares and joys that you may be holding. And I especially lift up the people of Ukraine into our space today. Let us join now in our time of silence and collective caring. Amen. And I invite us to take joy in and relish the sounds of children in our space too. Even as we go into this guided meditation, which will have silence as well as sounds of life. So, as our theme for today's service is listening, I'd like to invite us into a time of listening to our breaths and our bodies and ourselves. So I invite you now to join me in this time of meditation. Close your eyes if you wish. Place your feet on the floor if that is comfortable for you. Slowly take in a nice deep breath and then gently release it. Continue to breathe in deeply, feeling the breath come in through your nose and or mouth and throat, down into your lungs, into your belly, bringing life-giving air into your body, and then out. Feel the seat against you or the floor against you. Feel yourself resting into that support. Feel the ground on your feet and through the ground the earth, ever pulling on your body and holding you and saying, I am here for you. As you take in another breath, I invite you to turn your ears inward and listen. What is it today your body may be reminding you of? Maybe that is something to take notice of. Maybe it is something to set down and put out of your mind for now. With another breath, I invite you to notice what might be flitting into your mind, running through your mind, lingering. Notice, and then, like a cloud that moves through the air, let it move on and float by. And now I invite you to listen and turn your attention to your heart. What is on your heart today? Let us take a few intentional breaths as we turn our attention there, listening to that which is within us and seeing what we might hear. As we notice and hold these things, go ahead and give yourself a smile, reminding yourself that you are amazing, you are beautiful, you are fabulous, and you are enough.
your loving is a miracle. How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Our reading today is from UU minister and military chaplain Brett Lorty. It was a few years ago at General Assembly that gender-neutral bathrooms started appearing. The year they were officially introduced was my first year as GA chaplain, one of 4 ministers asked to offer spiritual support at our annual Assembly of Congregations. As I settled into my office at the beginning of that week, I wondered what concerns, feelings, thoughts, or issues people would bring. Mostly, it was the bathrooms. There was a fear and questions. What would they encounter in a gender-neutral bathroom? Would people of different genders be side by side? Would urinals be blocked off? What was the etiquette? What about discomfort? What if? I didn't have all the answers, but I found that the questions revealed much about gender privilege. These became the forum in which many of us confronted our own categorical thinking. Sorry, I got lost. The gender-neutral bathrooms were established in response to a number of attendees at General Assembly who pointed out that binary distinctions, such as male and female, didn't describe their experience of gender. They shared their experiences of being challenged because they looked too feminine for the men's room or too masculine for the women's room. It turned out many of us have never had to think about the social discomforts of walking into a bathroom, much less fear of violence based on our identity. However, that week at GA, I heard from transgender persons the incredible relief of being in the same boat with the rest of their beloved community. Finally, we were all a little uncomfortable in the bathrooms and working together to find a new normal, a new way of finding our way towards comfort. The discomfort that transgender people may experience every day in public restrooms, cisgender persons were feeling too, because our hearts were opening to sharing space in new ways. We all got to figure out what it feels like to live in a world with more equal access for all. We did the right thing by making several of our bathrooms gender neutral, but this issue brought the most people to the doors of the chaplain's office. As I listened to attendees process their experiences about their adventure into the uncharted territories of urinals and sanitary canisters, I realized that their primary discomfort focused around understanding the non-binary gender associations they were being asked to consider, often for the first time. They felt pushed into their zones of discomfort, and this fouled them more than politics or gender theory. As far as association controversies go, this was a cakewalk for me as a chaplain. A little listening, a few nudges towards compassion regarding the shared experiences of being human, some gentle reminders of our values, and most chaplains' visits ended very well. I was encouraged by how much the people wanted in their heart of hearts and how much they wanted to confront their polar thinking and existing biases, even when it came to the bathrooms and even when it was uncomfortable for them.
It's good to see you all. So before we come back to talking about bathrooms, don't worry, we'll get there. You were worried, I know. We'll get back there. I'd like to talk about streetcars in San Francisco for a minute. When I first lived in San Francisco about 12 years ago, which, yes, it really was that long, I didn't have a car, so public transit was my main mode of transportation. There was a major streetcar line that ran right through my neighborhood. I was on the N line. Now, streetcars, if you've been on them, the San Francisco streetcars can move a ton of people, especially during rush times, and then you can really cram a lot of people in. However, it takes a little bit of, some cooperation, and there are a ton of unspoken rules and assumptions. And when I first started writing them, I didn't even realize how ignorant I was of these. Nor did I even realize that I didn't realize that. One major rule is about backpacks, which are great, of course, for carrying stuff, but stick out from your back like an oversized turtle shell. The unspoken rule is that when it's crowded, you take your backpack off and you put it on the ground between your feet. Y'all ever seen that? Takes up less space, so you don't have your backpack, right up in somebody's face and stuff like that. I don't remember when, but at some point I did figure out this rule. What I do remember, though, is when I found myself looking at some other folks who were either new to the area or who were visiting and hadn't figured out the backpack rule, and I found myself annoyed at them, assuming that they were inconsiderate and rude because their backpacks were on their backs and it was crowded. Then I realized my own assumptions about them and how inconsiderate I must have looked for months, I admit, before figuring out the rule. Now, this does have a point, don't worry. Usually I tell this story when I first start at a church to remind folks I'm new here and that I don't know the unspoken rules or assumed traditions yet. And by the way, here at UUCB, that's still true. Totally weird to say, but I'm new here as far as our in-person worship services go. This is only my third one to lead. So please remember that I don't know the ways things always are done here. Although, given the break we've had in tradition and continuity, it's not a bad thing to reconsider some things anew and not try to just carbon copy the past. But I'm also telling this story to remind us that there are folks here who are coming through our doors for the first time every week. We're having first-time visitors every Sunday, and if that is you, whether you are online or here in person, we are so glad that you're here. And for folks who aren't new here, I encourage you to work on welcoming folks and not glaring at them from across the streetcar, thinking negative thoughts about the backpacks that they're wearing or whatnot. Now, what does this have to do with listening and hearing? It does connect, actually. Not only listening, but especially hearing have to do with meeting folks where they are, being sensitive to where they're coming from, and being mindful about what they're carrying in their metaphorical backpacks. Okay, maybe it's stretching the metaphor and story too much, but it kind of works, right? The sacred art of listening and hearing is our topic for today. Not only because it's a good thing to talk about, but also because it really is at the core of a healthy community and the relationships in a healthy community, especially in a church. As is the container for how we listen to each other and how we are with each other here at church. In other words, our covenant. And it's important all the time to be intentional about our listening and our presence with one another, but even more so during times that are potentially difficult and challenging. And frankly, that's a pretty good descriptor for not only the past few years, but likely the time ahead of us, too. So first, a little bit about covenant and about UUCB's covenant. A shortened version of the covenant is shared at the beginning of each of the worship services here, occasionally the long version, but usually it's the short version. Now, did you know, though, there are actually a number of different types of covenants? And actually, the shortened one and the longer one I see as being different types of covenants. Now, the process that the long one was written with here is a really fabulous one. It was written a number of years back, and those cards that we have, there's still some out in the atrium, has the date that it was passed on the bottom of them. Maybe 2004? Does anyone remember? Does that sound right? Okay, we'll go with it. And it was a long process, though, that happened that involved much of the congregation and resulted in a unanimous vote by the congregation on accepting it. And It's rather something for a group of UUs to have an unanimous vote on just about anything. So that was the longer version. A shortened version was written for inclusion in our worship services. So as I was saying, there are a number of different types of covenant, and there's overlap between them, so don't worry if there's similarities. There are aspirational covenants, behavioral covenants, covenants of right relationship, which are similar to the behavioral ones, but a bit more theological, mission or values covenants, and what one might call a congregational covenant, which is actually about specific expectations for membership. So aspirational, behavioral, more theological behavioral ones, mission and expectations. So here, take a listen to UUCBs and see what you hear. Here's the long one. We covenant to build a religious community guided by love and sustained by respectful relationships. Believing that building healthy relationships is a spiritual practice, we aim to listen appreciatively, speak with care, express gratitude, honor our differences, and assume good intentions. We endeavor to communicate directly, honestly, and compassionately, particularly when we are in conflict. When we hurt one another, we will try to forgive, make amends, and reconnect in the spirit of love. In celebration of the common purpose that unites us, we will do our best to abide by this covenant. Did you hear some of the different types in there? All right, now let's see. Here's a quiz question for you. You didn't know you were going to get a quiz today. Let's see how many of us can recite the short one, and no, I don't want it on screen. We're going to do this from memory. Y'all ready? Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another. Okay, not too bad. Now, at the core of these, you heard in both of them, is listening. We aim to listen appreciatively, to listen deeply, speak with care, and honor our differences. Not only listening, but hearing one another. These are at the core of the covenants we share, these covenants that are agreements for how we will be together, despite the differences and diversity in our community. And there is quite a bit of diversity. But listening deeply and appreciatively is far more easily said than done. So to start with, all sorts of things get in the way of even basic listening. How often are you in a conversation where at least half of your attention is on what you're going to say next, yeah? Or how what the other person said reminded you of something. Now, I'm guessing it'd be nearly impossible to study, although I'm sure some folks have tried it. But I'm guessing it would average out to at least half of our attention naturally is just in our own heads. And then our responses are so often coming from other places too, whether advice giving or sharing our opinions or giving support that so often isn't really real support after all. In the past couple of weeks, I led 3 workshops on conflict transformation here. And one of the exercises we did was getting at exactly this point. First, we spent 5 minutes sharing but giving non-reflective and even judgy responses. And then for the next 5 minutes, giving solid empathetic ones and focusing on really hearing and responding. It was a huge feeling shift between those 2 types. And so many folks talked about how hard the first part was because they really wanted to listen and respond empathetically. And either way, being able to shift to the deeper hearing felt like a relief and a welcome shift. I think often the hardest part of that shift for many folks is shifting away from the advice giving, even the totally well-meaning advice. How many folks here, let me just ask, are really good advice givers? Yeah, come on. How many of y'all have given someone advice in the past 24 hours? 48? Do we get any more hands there? I think this morning was for me. Yeah. What might it feel like to try not to give any advice in the next conversation you have? Could be an interesting experiment, right? Now, while deep and empathetic listening sounds straightforward in theory, there is so much that gets in the way of them. The quantity of our excellent, spontaneously formed advice is only one of them. The habits of our attention is another one. First, it takes a shift from the normal attention and cadence from the usual back and forth in conversations to get us away from all that stuff in our own heads. And also, our current society and the pace of the digital world have not helped this out one bit. Average attention spans have dropped precipitously. Even if you just look at the length of time, this is on television or especially commercials, but even just regular television shows, at the length of time before shifting to different camera perspectives and compare television shows from 20 years ago and now, probably even 10 years ago and now, the difference is startling. Largely, we are getting shorter and shorter attention spans reinforced all around us. And the pace of digital feeds on social media and whatnot, and the volume of information doesn't help that either. Fully focusing on someone else takes an entirely different level of slowing down and paying attention. And then, when we've even done that, they're staying with them. Even when they're sharing about feelings or about some sort of pain they're going through. First of all, let's talk about the feelings part. By and large, Americans are overall just not very good at talking about feelings, and especially being with someone else who's talking about feelings. I've certainly wished that what I call my feelings vocabulary was larger and more varied. And then you have as I call them, the tissue pushers. How often are you in an emotional conversation with somebody or see somebody else and you get out a box of tissues and push it towards them, right? What that's unconsciously communicating is, I'm not comfortable with your show of feelings, please clean it up. Now, I do believe that folks here in this congregation are better than the average American in so many ways, but also at staying around and talking about feelings. Our overall participation in chalice circles and other small groups certainly validates that. But that doesn't mean that difficult feelings are easy to stay with and really be with. There's a Buddhist practice called Tonglen that relates to this as well. According to Pema Chodron, Tong means sending out or letting go, and Len means receiving or accepting. Tong Len. It is ordinarily practiced in sitting meditation using the breath. Put simply, the practitioner breathes in the bad and breathes out the good, taking on the suffering of other sentient beings. Now, this means being there with someone, with their suffering, with their pain, hearing it and taking it in, and not running from it. Literally, or running away by switching into non-empathetic mode with advice giving or other distancing type things that we might do. Just being there. Being with someone when they're hurting. This sounds easy, right? No. Tonglen is a deep, deep practice, and one that some name as a key element of spiritual maturity. And some days I can do it more readily, while others my capacity may be lessened or diminished for some reason, either for stuff I'm going through, being stressed out, or any number of things. Sometimes, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, our jars are just smaller, and there's not as much we can take on. But it is definitely something to strive for. As the late Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche said, the more negativity we take in with a sense of openness and compassion, the more goodness there is to breathe out. In a way, it's like the song in our teal hymnal that we sing every so often, written by UU composer Sarah Dan Jones. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. So, with all these things in mind, want to go back to bathrooms? Bill shared a story about some of the feelings and challenges around instituting gender identity inclusive bathrooms at the annual UU General Assembly, which is the largest gathering of UUs in North America. And often it is at the cutting edge of so many things that are at that gathering. And this change, even though it's cutting edge, this change was difficult for many folks. And since the time that story took place, I've been to a General Assembly and have still encountered a variety of different reactions when folks have encountered the inclusive signage around the bathrooms. And with the changing of the bathrooms here in the atrium to being gender inclusive, a lot of feelings and reactions have gotten stirred up. So how do we sit with those? First, we listen to one another as we're working through our feelings on them. Let's listen, but what I'd also like to encourage us to do is to listen and hear the folks for whom that kind of welcoming is identity firming, how it takes away the pressure that the battleground of bathrooms is that they so often face. This seemingly simple, totally essential human need that is so often a place of stress and even fear for our transgender folks and anyone who is not of the typical appearing gender identities. Folks who don't fit into the boxes of binary gender differences for any number of reasons. Let us listen and hear their stories and needs as well. Listening and hearing isn't just about folks that we know around us with identities and stories that we may be familiar with, because it's also about listening to the voices and experiences of those we may not be as familiar with. Maybe folks with different gender identities or gender presentations. Maybe folks with different economic realities. Maybe folks with different experiences or histories or opinions about different parts of the church, like our Freestone Retreat property, for instance. Whatever it takes, the effort we make for listening and hearing, for deeply listening and appreciatively hearing, whatever it takes, the effort is worth it. May we open our hearts and our ears and together breathe in peace and breathe out love. May it be so.
Each week, half of our offering is shared with a good neighbor organization that needs our financial support. And we hope to continue practicing generosity with them during these times. This month, our good neighbor is YES, Nature to Neighborhoods. In partnership with Nature, YES nurtures leaders who champion the well-being of our community. Their vision for Richmond youth, adults, and families has led to healthy, connected lives, motivating change in their neighborhoods to inspire a safe, thriving community. For the time being, we're conducting our offering without passing the plate. Instead, if you're in the sanctuary, you can either give electronically or you can grab a donation envelope in the back or in the front of the pew in front of you, or in the back of the pew in front of you. That makes sense. And take that and put it in the donation box with your donation, which is beside the fountain in the atrium. For those of you who are tech savvy, you can absolutely give electronically. If you look at the back of your name tag, there's a QR code that you can scan with a web that will link you to a web address. that will take you to a giving page. You can text the number on the back, or you can do so electronically. Please note whether it is a pledge or a plate when you make that donation. So with all of that out of the way, offerings of any value are received with gratitude. Thank you. I can barely play Happy Birthday on the piano, and it sounds really bad. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create a loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
It has been so good being together today. So I have a couple of announcements before we shift into our after-service time. Well, we're going to sing first, too, of course. So there will not be online coffee hour today. So if you are online and looking for that, I encourage you to log back on to either YouTube or Facebook, because we'll be streaming what I'm about to talk about. After the service, I encourage you to come on back in here for a information and question and answer session about a lot of information about the church's Freestone Retreat property in Sonoma County. There was a link to a bunch of information that went out. It was near the bottom of the week ahead. I have printed out packets that will be in the atrium that you can grab. Not the whole packet, it was way too many pages, but it's the summary report and the table of contents. So you can grab that, come on back in, and Tess and I and the Freestone Committee and others will be sharing the information with you. And is really some important steps in a long process that we're going through to really engage with and make some decisions about the future of that property for the congregation. If you can't stay today, there's still a couple other chances for being able to talk about the information, at least and ask questions about it. This Tuesday on Zoom exclusively, 7 p.m., we'll have another Q&A, and then 2 Sundays from now, on the 24th, on our Earth Day Sunday service. We'll have it after the service then, too. And then we will also have some small group times to share our thoughts about them and a lot of other things. So please, even if you can't stay, grab a copy of the packet, but I hope you can. So come on back in after the service for that. And with that, y'all want to sing? Fabulous song, When Our Heart Is in a Holy Place. The words will be up on screen, and it's in your teal hymnal as well if you want to look at that.
When our heart is in the holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, We are blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
What a fabulous holy place this is we share together, where we are blessed with love around us and with amazing grace that holds us and embraces us. From this time of worship, may you now go with hope, with connection, with peace, and with courage. And remember, you're never all alone. Blessed be.